This video contains audio content only. There are no visual elements or images accompanying the audio. If you're expecting to see video footage, please note that this is an intentional audio-only presentation. We recommend listening to this content rather than watching the screen. Thank you for your understanding and enjoy the audio. Welcome to an exploration of one of evolution's most fascinating stories, island syndrome. In this easy-to-understand journey, we'll delve into the unique and often bizarre ways that life adapts on islands, those isolated fragments of land scattered across our oceans. Prepare to be amazed as we uncover the secrets of these evolutionary laboratories, where the familiar rules of life are often rewritten. Islands, separated from continents by vast stretches of water, present unique challenges and opportunities for the species that inhabit them. Limited resources, unusual climates, and the absence of certain predators create a selective pressure cooker, driving evolution down unexpected paths. Over generations, these pressures can transform island inhabitants into something altogether different from their mainland ancestors. We'll uncover the mysteries of insular gigantism, where small creatures balloon to enormous sizes, and insular dwarfism, where giants shrink to miniature forms. Imagine insects the size of sparrows, rodents that dwarf their mainland cousins, and reptiles that become apex predators. We'll explore how the absence of familiar predators can lead to island tameness, a loss of fear that can have both endearing and devastating consequences. But island life isn't just about dramatic size changes and fearless creatures. We'll also delve into the subtle but equally important adaptations that shape island life. Discover how changes in coloration, reproductive strategies, and even the very structure of plants are all influenced by the unique pressures of island living. We'll examine how limited resources and intense competition shape the behavior of island animals, influencing everything from territoriality to diet. This exploration of island syndrome will not only showcase the remarkable diversity of life on Earth but also reveal fundamental principles of evolution. We'll see how isolation can accelerate evolutionary change, how adaptation is a constant interplay between organisms and their environment, and how even small changes in ecological pressures can have profound and lasting effects. Get ready to embark on a journey to a world apart, where the strange and wonderful abound. By the end of this exploration, you'll have a deeper understanding of the forces that shape life on Earth and a newfound appreciation for the remarkable biodiversity found in these isolated worlds. Join us as we unravel the secrets of island syndrome and discover how islands rewrite the rules of life. Chapter 1. A World Apart: How Islands Rewrite the Rules of Life. Islands, scattered like emerald jewels across the vast expanse of our oceans, are far more than just picturesque landscapes. They are isolated realms, worlds apart, where the familiar rules of life are often rewritten, transforming these secluded havens into unique evolutionary laboratories. Separated from the mainland by vast stretches of water, islands offer a glimpse into the extraordinary power of evolution to shape life in unexpected and often astounding ways. The distinct ecological pressures encountered on islands, the absence of certain predators, limited resources, and unique climates, have given rise to a breathtaking array of unusual adaptations that capture the imagination and challenge our understanding of the natural world. This is the story of island syndrome, a suite of evolutionary changes that transform island inhabitants into something altogether different from their mainland ancestors. Imagine a world where birds abandon the sky, where reptiles grow to monstrous proportions, and where mammals shrink to miniature versions of their former selves. This is the reality of island life, a testament to the adaptability of life in the face of unique evolutionary pressures. Islands, by their very nature, present a simplified version of continental ecosystems. This simplification acts as a catalyst for evolutionary change, pushing species down unexpected paths. The relative paucity of large predators, for example, can fundamentally alter the selective pressures shaping prey species. No longer needing to invest heavily in predator evasion strategies, island species may lose traits that are essential for survival on the mainland. Consider the weevils, small beetles that often rely on camouflage and quick movements to avoid being eaten. On islands, where the threat of predation is diminished, some weevils have lost these predator evasion morphologies. Similarly, many island birds, freed from the constant threat of terrestrial predators, have lost the ability to fly. The wings of rails, pigeons, and even the iconic dodo of Mauritius have become reduced, sometimes to the point of complete disappearance. The moa of New Zealand provides the most extreme example of this phenomenon, having completely lost its wings, leaving behind no osseous evidence of their existence. This loss of flight allows resources to be reallocated, often leading to changes in body size and skeletal structure. Even the barn owl, a skilled aerial hunter, exhibits shorter wings in some island populations, suggesting a reduction in flight capacity as a response to the altered environment. The absence of large predators is just one piece of the island puzzle. Limited resources and the peculiar climates of islands also play a crucial role in shaping the trajectory of evolution. Islands often exhibit what biologists call density compensation. Because island ecosystems typically comprise a limited number of species, populations of those species can become incredibly dense. This leads to increased intraspecific competition between individuals of the same species, while simultaneously reducing interspecific competition between different species. This shift in competitive dynamics can have profound effects on the morphology, ecology, and behavior of island species. The southern cassowary, a large, flightless bird found in Indonesia, New Guinea, and northeastern Australia, exemplifies the unique evolutionary pathways forged on islands. In contrast to its mainland relatives, the southern cassowary exhibits sexually monomorphic plumage. Males and females look alike. This is thought to be a consequence of reduced sexual selection pressure on islands, where species recognition is less critical due to lower biodiversity. The fossa, a carnivorous mammal found on the island of Madagascar, demonstrates another aspect of the island syndrome, insular gigantism. Larger than its mongoose relatives on the mainland, the fossa has evolved to fill the niche typically occupied by large predators, which are often absent on islands. Similarly, the coconut crab, an imposing land crab, has evolved to gigantic proportions on islands across the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Even seemingly subtle changes in the environment, such as reduced parasite diversity, can have ripple effects throughout the island ecosystem. With fewer parasites to contend with, island species may experience relaxed selection on immune-related genes, potentially leading to changes in immune system function. The nematode parasite Heligmasomoides polygyrus, for instance, has demonstrated reduced genetic diversity after colonizing island ecosystems. This reduced diversity may be linked to founder effects, where a small number of individuals establish a new population, or to the reduced selective pressures encountered in a less diverse environment. The expensive tissue hypothesis suggests that energetically costly tissues, like the brain, may be reduced in size on islands, where the need for constant vigilance against predators is diminished. The extinct Malagasy dwarf hippos, for example, had brains significantly smaller than their mainland ancestors. Homo floresiensis, discovered on the Indonesian island of Flores, provides another striking example of this phenomenon, exhibiting a remarkably small brain size compared to other hominins. Plants, too, are subject to the transformative power of island syndrome. Insular woodiness, the evolutionary shift from herbaceousness to woodiness, is a common phenomenon in island floras. The megaherbs of New Zealand's subantarctic islands, for instance, represent a dramatic example of this adaptation, with species like the Ross lily and Campbell Island carrot exhibiting impressive size and unique floral displays. Changes in reproductive strategies are also frequently observed. Island lizards, for example, often lay smaller clutches of larger eggs, investing more heavily in each offspring. This increase in parental investment is thought to be a response to the increased intraspecific competition experienced by island populations. The interplay of reduced predation, limited resources, and unique climates creates a dynamic evolutionary crucible on islands. Species adapt in remarkable ways, sometimes losing traits that are essential on the mainland, other times developing entirely new features. Adaptive coloration also plays a crucial role, with some species exhibiting reduced sexual coloration while others, like certain island populations of the chestnut-bellied monarch, display increased melanism. This increased melanism is thought to be linked to a variety of factors, including thermoregulation, camouflage, and even reduced sexual selection pressures. Islands, therefore, are not just isolated fragments of land. They are natural laboratories where the rules of life are constantly being tested and rewritten. They are a world apart, where the strange and wonderful abound, offering a unique window into the endless creativity of evolution. The island syndrome, with its intricate tapestry of adaptations, presents a compelling narrative of evolutionary change, setting the stage for a deeper exploration of the remarkable biodiversity found in these isolated worlds. Chapter 2. Island Giants and Dwarfs. A Tale of Shifting Scales. The dramatic shifts in body size observed in island species, the emergence of giants where dwarfs once roamed and the shrinking of titans into miniature forms, are intricate evolutionary tales, spun from the unique ecological pressures of these isolated worlds. These changes in scale, known as insular gigantism and insular dwarfism, are a testament to the power of natural selection to mold life in response to the opportunities and challenges presented by island environments. Gigantism, the phenomenon where small species balloon in size on islands, is a common theme in these isolated ecosystems. Rodents, reptiles, and certain birds often exhibit this dramatic growth spurt. The extinct moa of New Zealand, for instance, evolved into a towering flightless bird, showcasing the extreme potential for gigantism in these unique environments. Consider the fossa, a cat-like carnivore found on the island of Madagascar. In the absence of large predatory competitors, the fossa has grown larger than its mongoose relatives on the mainland, evolving to occupy the apex predator niche. This niche expansion, driven by reduced interspecific competition, is a key driver of insular gigantism. The coconut crab, a massive land crab found on islands across the Indian and Pacific Oceans, exemplifies this principle, reaching colossal proportions unmatched by any other terrestrial arthropod. Even invertebrates, like the giant weta of New Zealand, showcase the potential for gigantism. These enormous insects, some of which weigh more than a sparrow, have thrived in the absence of mammalian predators. Birds, too, can participate in this trend, as seen in the extant cassowary of Australia and New Guinea, a flightless giant that evolved in island-like environments. The Komodo dragon, the largest living lizard, found on a handful of Indonesian islands, further illustrates the potential for reptiles to reach enormous sizes in these isolated settings. These reptilian giants likely benefited from the reduced competition and the availability of large prey, such as the now extinct giant tortoises that once inhabited these islands. The opposing force, dwarfism, the shrinking of large species on islands, is another fascinating aspect of island syndrome. This phenomenon is particularly prevalent in large mammals. The extinct Malagasy hippopotamuses, for example, were significantly smaller than their continental ancestors. Limited resources on islands contribute to this trend. The expensive tissue hypothesis proposes that metabolically demanding tissues, such as the brain, can be reduced in size to conserve energy in resource-constrained environments. This hypothesis is supported by evidence from the Malagasy dwarf hippos, which exhibited a 30% reduction in endocranial volume compared to their mainland counterparts of similar size. Even in human evolution, island dwarfism has played a role. Homo floresiensis, an extinct hominin species found on the Indonesian island of Flores, displayed a remarkably small brain, comparable in size to much earlier Australopithecus specimens from mainland Africa. This suggests that the reduced predation pressure and limited resources on islands can lead to a decrease in brain size. The interplay between gigantism and dwarfism is captured by Foster's rule, which posits that small species become larger and large species become smaller on islands. This rule reflects the combined effects of reduced interspecific competition and altered predation pressures. The giant gymnor, Dinogalurix, an extinct, hedgehog-like mammal from Gargano Island in the Miocene-Pliocene Mediterranean, provides a striking example of insular gigantism, while dwarf elephants, like those that once roamed Pleistocene Crete, illustrate the opposite trend. Interestingly, Foster's rule isn't limited to animals. Plants, too, exhibit this pattern. The megaherbs of New Zealand, massive herbaceous plants found on several subantarctic islands, exemplify insular plant gigantism, while other island plants exhibit reduced stature compared to their mainland relatives. Island size also plays a significant role in the magnitude of these size changes. Smaller islands, with their even more limited resources and more rapid evolutionary rates, tend to amplify the effects of gigantism and dwarfism. Species on smaller islands often evolve more extreme size differences compared to their mainland relatives or those on larger islands. For example, the extinct giant earwig, Labradora herculeana, of St. Helena Island reached a remarkable size, likely due to the island's small size and isolation. The story of island gigantism also involves the intriguing element of territoriality. Studies have shown that territorial species on islands tend to be larger than their mainland counterparts, especially among smaller species. Larger size confers a competitive advantage in defending territories, further driving the evolution of gigantism in island populations. For instance, the Ibiza wall lizard, Podarches pituitensis, exhibits greater flight initiation distances and flees further on islets with higher predation pressure, suggesting that larger size may be advantageous in defending territories against rivals or avoiding predators. It's important to note that not all apparent examples of island gigantism are true products of insular evolution. The giant tortoises of the Galapagos and Seychelles Islands, while impressive in size, are not considered true examples of insular gigantism. They are believed to be remnants of a once widespread lineage of giant tortoises that existed on continents and other islands. Their persistence on these remote archipelagos is likely due to the relatively late arrival of humans and the subsequent reduced predation pressure. Insular woodiness, the increased prevalence of woody plants on islands, is another example of an evolutionary trend observed in island ecosystems. This shift towards woodiness is often accompanied by other changes, such as increased leaf and seed size, which may enhance seedling survival in the competitive island environment. For example, the mapo tree, Scyphostemma mapia, of Mauritius, also known as the Mauritian baobab, exemplifies insular woodiness, showcasing the tendency for island plants to evolve towards a woody growth form. Chapter 3. Taming the Wild: How Islands Shape Animal Behavior. The unique ecological pressures of islands not only reshape the physical appearance of animals but also profoundly influence their behavior. The absence of certain predators and competitors, combined with the constraints of island life, leads to a fascinating array of behavioral adaptations, from a diminished fear of predators to altered territoriality, dietary shifts, and changes in reproductive strategies. Island tameness, a phenomenon where animals lose their innate fear of predators, including humans, is a striking example of how island life can rewrite the rules of behavior. Falkland Island foxes and Tamar wallabies, for instance, exhibit this remarkable docility. This reduced fear is often attributed to the absence of large predators in island ecosystems. However, this tameness can have both positive and negative consequences. While it may reduce the energetic costs associated with constant vigilance, it also renders island species incredibly vulnerable when faced with introduced predators or human hunters. The dodo, a flightless pigeon of Mauritius, is a tragic example of how island tameness contributed to extinction. Unafraid of humans, dodos were easy targets for hunters, leading to their rapid demise. Similarly, the Falkland Island wolf, also known as the wara, another example of an island-tamed species, was driven to extinction in the 19th century due to its lack of fear of humans. Even extant species, like the Galapagos marine iguana, exhibit varying degrees of tameness depending on the presence or absence of predators on different islands. Iguanas on predator-free islets display shorter flight initiation distances compared to those on islands with introduced predators, highlighting the plasticity of this behavioral trait. Territoriality, a common behavior in mainland species, can also be dramatically altered on islands. Deer mice, song sparrows, and bronze anoles, for example, have smaller territories with greater overlap in island populations, reflecting a reduced need to defend resources or mates in a less competitive environment. This reduction in territoriality is driven by several factors, including density compensation, where limited space and resources necessitate greater tolerance among individuals of the same species. The Aegean wall lizard, Podarches or hardy, for instance, exhibits shorter flight initiation distances and bolder behavior on islets compared to the main island, suggesting a relaxation of territorial defense mechanisms in the absence of strong competition. Altered territorial behavior can have significant implications for social structures and mating systems. Some island species, like the deer mouse, have even been observed to exhibit reduced aggression towards juveniles and non-kin, potentially reflecting a shift towards more cooperative social interactions in the face of limited resources. Dietary shifts are another common behavioral adaptation on islands. With limited prey options, some predators may broaden their diets to include a wider range of food sources. The tiger snake, Notochus scutatus, for example, exhibits varying responses to handling depending on the predator richness of their island environment, suggesting a plasticity in their anti-predator behavior that may be linked to dietary shifts and altered predation pressure. Conversely, herbivores may encounter novel plants and adapt their feeding strategies accordingly. The Iago sparrow, Passer iagonensis, of the Cape Verde archipelago, for instance, exhibits adaptations to a wide aridity gradient across different islands, likely involving shifts in diet and foraging behavior in response to the varying vegetation and resource availability. These dietary shifts can have evolutionary advantages, allowing species to exploit new food sources, but can also lead to increased competition if multiple species converge on the same limited resources. Parasites, too, exhibit unique evolutionary trajectories on islands. The nematode parasite Heligmazomoides polygyrus exemplifies how even parasites can undergo niche expansion and reduced genetic diversity after colonizing island ecosystems. Niche expansion can occur when a parasite encounters a new host species in the absence of its original host or when it adapts to exploit a new ecological niche within its existing host. The reduced genetic diversity often observed in island parasite populations can result from founder effects or the reduced selective pressures encountered in a less diverse environment. This reduced diversity may impact the parasite's ability to adapt to future environmental changes or to resist host immune responses. Other parasites, like the nematode, have also shown reduced genetic diversity and niche expansion on islands. Changes in reproductive behavior are also a hallmark of island syndrome. Island species often invest more in each offspring, producing fewer young but providing greater parental care. Lizards on islands, for example, often lay smaller clutches of larger eggs, a pattern consistent with the island syndrome hypothesis. This increased investment in each offspring can manifest in various ways, from larger egg size and longer incubation periods to increased parental feeding and protection of young. Island scrub jays, Ephelocoma insularis, for instance, have been observed to be more explorative than their mainland counterparts, a trait that may be linked to increased parental investment in offspring and the need to secure resources in a competitive environment. The trade-off between offspring number and parental care is driven by the increased intraspecific competition and reduced predation risk experienced by island populations. By investing more in each offspring, island species increase the likelihood of their young surviving to adulthood and successfully competing for limited resources. This shift in reproductive strategy can have profound impacts on population dynamics, influencing population growth rates, age structure, and overall resilience to environmental change. These behavioral adaptations, shaped by the unique ecological pressures of islands, demonstrate the remarkable plasticity of animal behavior and the power of natural selection to mold life in unexpected ways. From the tameness of island foxes to the altered territoriality of lizards, the dietary shifts of predators and herbivores, and the evolutionary trajectories of parasites, the behavioral landscape of islands is a testament to the endless creativity of evolution. Chapter 4. The Double-Edged Sword of Island Life, Paradise Lost? Islands, while often perceived as evolutionary paradises, are in reality incredibly fragile ecosystems. The very factors that drive the evolution of unique island traits, isolation, limited resources, and simplified ecological communities, also render these species exceptionally vulnerable to external threats. The arrival of humans, often accompanied by a suite of introduced species, has dramatically altered the evolutionary trajectory of countless island inhabitants, pushing many towards the brink of extinction. The relaxed selection pressures on islands, particularly the absence of large predators, have led to significant behavioral shifts in island species. A striking example of this is island tameness, where animals lose their innate fear of predators, including humans. This phenomenon is not limited to Falkland Island foxes and Tamar wallabies. Numerous other species, including various island birds and reptiles, display reduced anti-predator behaviors. For instance, several species of birds in the Falkland Islands show significantly shorter flight initiation distances compared to their mainland relatives. This reduced vigilance, coupled with the loss of other anti-predator adaptations like alarm calls and defensive strategies, makes these animals easy targets for introduced predators. The now extinct dodo, a flightless pigeon of Mauritius, exemplified this vulnerability, readily approaching humans without fear, ultimately leading to its demise. Even reptiles, like the spiny-tailed iguana, Ctenosaura hemilopha, of Cerralvo Island in the Gulf of California, exhibit less wary behavior and shorter flight initiation distances compared to their mainland counterparts. Similarly, the Galapagos marine iguana, while generally tame, demonstrates increased wariness and longer flight initiation distances on islands where introduced predators, such as cats, are present. This highlights the dynamic nature of island tameness and its dependence on the prevailing predator regime. Territoriality, another key aspect of animal behavior, is also significantly affected by island life. The absence of usual competitors often leads to a reduction in territory size and a relaxation of territorial defense. Deer mice, song sparrows, and bronze anoles, for instance, exhibit smaller territories with greater overlap on islands compared to their mainland counterparts. This reduced territoriality reflects the diminished need to defend resources in a less competitive environment. However, the introduction of new competitors can disrupt this balance. Studies of the Aegean wall lizard across various islets have revealed a complex relationship between territoriality and predation pressure. Lizards from smaller, more isolated islets, where predation is often lower, tend to have shorter flight initiation distances and bolder behavior, suggesting a reduction in territorial defense. However, on islets with higher predation pressure, lizards maintain a similar level of wariness as their mainland counterparts, indicating that the presence of predators can override the effects of reduced competition on territorial behavior. Dietary shifts are also common in island animals, driven by the unique composition of island ecosystems. The limited prey options on islands can push predators towards becoming more generalist in their diets. For example, the bull-headed shrike, Lanius bucephalus, on several Japanese islands exhibits longer flight initiation distances compared to its mainland counterparts, potentially reflecting an increased wariness due to the higher risk of predation from introduced rats. This suggests that dietary shifts, coupled with changes in predator-prey dynamics, can significantly influence anti-predator behavior. Conversely, herbivores on islands may adapt to consume novel plant resources, leading to specialized feeding strategies and even morphological changes in their digestive systems. Island plants themselves often evolve reduced defenses against herbivores, like thorns and chemical deterrents, due to the lower herbivore pressure. This, in turn, can influence the behavior of herbivores, allowing them to access resources with less effort. Reproductive behavior also undergoes significant changes on islands. The concept of increased parental investment in fewer offspring is a key feature of the island syndrome. This strategy, observed in various island species, involves producing smaller clutches or litters but investing more heavily in each individual offspring. This is evident in island lizards, which typically lay smaller clutches of larger eggs compared to their mainland relatives. This trend is also seen in birds, such as the Iago sparrow of the Cape Verde Islands, which exhibits reduced clutch sizes compared to mainland relatives. This increased parental care, including extended periods of parental feeding and protection, enhances the survival and competitive ability of offspring in the resource-limited island environment. Island rodents, such as deer mice, also demonstrate altered reproductive strategies, with some island populations exhibiting reduced aggression towards juveniles, potentially reflecting a shift towards more cooperative breeding behavior. The absence of large predators has profound effects on the evolution of anti-predator adaptations in island animals. Reduced wing size and flightlessness are common occurrences in island birds, reflecting the diminished need for predator evasion. Rails, pigeons, and weevils are just a few examples of island species that have lost or reduced their wings. This loss of flight is often accompanied by changes in skeletal structure, with the pectoral girdle, which supports the wings, becoming reduced or even disappearing altogether, as seen in the extinct moa. These changes not only reflect the reduced need for escape but also free up resources that can be reallocated to other functions, such as increased body size or enhanced reproductive output. The absence of usual interspecific competition on islands can lead to niche expansion and significant changes in social structures. With fewer competitors, island species can expand their range of resources and habitats, leading to altered foraging strategies and even the evolution of entirely new ecological roles. The fossa of Madagascar, for example, has evolved to occupy the apex predator niche in the absence of large mammalian carnivores. Similarly, the coconut crab, freed from competition with other large terrestrial scavengers, has evolved to fill the role of a top invertebrate predator and scavenger on many islands. These shifts in species interactions can have cascading effects throughout the island ecosystem, influencing everything from plant communities to nutrient cycling. The combination of these behavioral and ecological changes creates a delicate balance in island ecosystems. While the absence of certain pressures can lead to remarkable adaptations, it also makes island species particularly susceptible to external threats, especially those introduced by human activities. The ongoing challenge is to understand and mitigate these threats, preserving the unique and fragile biodiversity of these isolated worlds. Chapter 5. Whispers in the Genes: Unraveling the Secrets of Island Syndrome. The remarkable adaptations seen in island species are not merely skin-deep, they are etched into the very fabric of their DNA. Island syndrome, the suite of evolutionary changes observed in island inhabitants, is driven by profound genetic shifts, whispers in the genes that reveal the secrets of rapid evolutionary change. Recent research, delving into the genomes of island species, has begun to unravel the genetic mechanisms underlying these adaptations, providing crucial insights for conservation efforts. Reduced predation, a defining feature of many island environments, has profound genetic consequences. The loss of wings in island birds, exemplified by the flightless rails, pigeons, and the extinct dodo, is not merely a loss of function, it's a reflection of altered gene expression. Studies of the moa, the most extreme example of insular wing reduction, have revealed the complete loss of wing structures, even at the skeletal level, indicating fundamental changes in developmental genes. Even in species that retain some flight capacity, like the barn owl, island populations exhibit shorter wings, a transitional stage in this evolutionary trajectory, likely reflecting changes in genes regulating wing development. Reduced predation pressure also relaxes selection on genes related to predator evasion behaviors, contributing to the phenomenon of island tameness. This tameness, while seemingly benign, can become a deadly liability when introduced predators, like cats and rats, arrive on the scene. The scarcity of resources and the unique climates of islands also exert selective pressure on the genomes of island species. The evolution of gigantism and dwarfism, dramatic shifts in body size, are driven by changes in genes regulating growth and development. The fossa of Madagascar, a giant relative of the mongoose, exemplifies the genetic basis of insular gigantism. Its increased size, likely driven by the absence of large mammalian predators and the availability of larger prey, reflects changes in genes controlling growth hormones and skeletal development. Conversely, the extinct Malagasy dwarf hippos and Homo floresiensis demonstrate the genetic underpinnings of insular dwarfism. Their reduced size, an adaptation to limited resources and reduced predation pressure, likely involves changes in genes regulating metabolism and growth. The expensive tissue hypothesis, which posits that metabolically costly tissues like the brain may be reduced in size on islands, is supported by the smaller brain size observed in these species. Studies of their cranial morphology have revealed a significant reduction in endocranial volume, reflecting changes in genes controlling brain development. Even subtle shifts in the island environment, such as reduced parasite diversity, leave their mark on the genome. Island birds, for example, have shown changes in immune-related genes, possibly reflecting a relaxation of selection pressure in the absence of a diverse parasite community. This reduced immune system diversity, while advantageous in the simplified island environment, can become a critical weakness when faced with introduced diseases. The devastating impact of avian malaria on native Hawaiian bird populations highlights the fragility of island immune systems. Plants, too, experience profound genetic changes in response to island life. The genetic basis of insular woodiness, the increased prevalence of woody plants on islands, is being unraveled through studies of species like Darwin's giant daisies. These studies have revealed changes in genes regulating growth form and wood development, shedding light on the evolutionary pathways leading to this common island adaptation. The megaherbs of New Zealand, another example of insular woodiness, provide further opportunities to explore the genetic mechanisms driving this phenomenon. Their massive size and unique adaptations to the subantarctic island environment offer a valuable window into the evolutionary history of island plants. The genetic adaptations of island species, while beneficial in their isolated world, become a double-edged sword when faced with human-induced changes. Introduced predators, habitat loss, and climate change pose significant threats to island ecosystems. The unique genetic makeup of island species, shaped by reduced predation and competition, often renders them ill-equipped to cope with these new challenges. Island tameness, for example, becomes a death sentence in the presence of introduced predators. The dodo and Rodriguez solitaire, both flightless island birds, are tragic examples of this vulnerability. Island biogeography, the study of species distribution and diversity on islands, provides a framework for understanding extinction risk. Island size and distance from the mainland are key factors influencing species diversity and vulnerability. Smaller, more isolated islands tend to have lower species diversity and higher extinction rates. The loss of a single species on a small island can have cascading effects throughout the ecosystem, disrupting delicate ecological balances. Studies of island rodents, like deer mice, have revealed genetic changes influencing behavior, such as reduced aggression and altered dispersal tendencies. These changes, while adaptive in the island context, can become detrimental when faced with habitat fragmentation or the introduction of new competitors. The genetic whispers of island syndrome, once a testament to the adaptability of life, now serve as a warning. The fragility of island ecosystems and the unique genetic makeup of their inhabitants demand urgent conservation efforts. Protecting these isolated worlds is not just about preserving biodiversity. It's about safeguarding the evolutionary stories they tell, stories that offer valuable insights into the power and fragility of life itself. We've seen how the absence of large predators can lead to island tameness, a loss of fear that makes species vulnerable to introduced threats. The tragic extinction of the dodo serves as a stark reminder of this vulnerability. Conversely, smaller species can experience gigantism, evolving into apex predators like the fossa of Madagascar or the colossal coconut crab. Large mammals, on the other hand, often exhibit dwarfism, adapting to limited resources. This interplay of gigantism and dwarfism, captured by Foster's rule, highlights the dynamic balance of island life. Even subtle changes, like reduced parasite diversity, can have profound genetic consequences, impacting immune system function and disease resistance. Plants, too, adapt, exhibiting insular woodiness and altered reproductive strategies, investing more heavily in fewer offspring. These adaptations, etched in the DNA of island inhabitants, reveal the secrets of rapid evolutionary change. These findings have far-reaching implications for our understanding of evolution and conservation. Island ecosystems, while showcasing the adaptability of life, are incredibly fragile. The very traits that allow species to thrive in isolation become liabilities in the face of human-induced changes. Introduced predators, habitat loss, and climate change pose significant threats to these unique biological treasures. The study of island syndrome provides crucial insights for conservation efforts. Understanding the genetic and behavioral adaptations of island species allows us to better predict their vulnerability and develop effective conservation strategies. Protecting these isolated worlds is not just about preserving biodiversity, it's about safeguarding evolutionary history and the valuable lessons it holds. Where does this research lead us next? Exploring the genetic mechanisms underlying island adaptations will be crucial for predicting how species might respond to future environmental changes. Further research into the complex interplay between behavior, genetics, and environment will deepen our understanding of the evolutionary process itself. What are your thoughts on the remarkable adaptations of island life? Share your questions and insights in the comments below. We encourage you to like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the wonders of the natural world. Suggest topics you'd like us to cover in future videos. We value your input. Never stop questioning, never stop exploring. The world is full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and the pursuit of knowledge is an adventure worth taking.